Reddit is an ocean of voices. Millions of posts are made every single month, and most disappear into the void without a trace. But sometimes, something interesting surfaces. A post so strange, so dark, or so mysterious that it spreads like a virus across the site. At first, it makes no sense. A cryptic message, a haunting image, a desperate cry for help. But the deeper you look, the more mysterious it gets. Today, we're diving into some of the darkest and most mysterious Reddit posts. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into some of Reddit's darkest mysteries. The Box of Crazy. There are some mysteries that don't start with a crime scene or a missing person. They start with an object. Something that feels off the moment you touch it. What looked like an ordinary, dust-covered box sitting beside a dumpster would turn out to contain one man's descent into madness. A decades-long attempt to document something no one else could see. It all began when a Reddit user named TramStopDan made a post on the subreddit r/whatisinthithing about 12 years ago. The post read, "Large box, full of odd illustrations of an event, aka the Box of Crazy, found by the trash bins." Along with this, he posted an image of the box that he found. On the outside, it looked just like a normal box, but looks to be a large artist portfolio case. Looking at the box, it's obviously really worn out, but it has these specific, simple, industrial-style toggle latches and a black composite carrying handle, which were introduced mostly in the mid-20th century. So to narrow it down, these kinds of boxes were mostly used between 1920 and 1950, so this box was really old. But what made it so special was what was on the inside. When the user opened it, he found hundreds of pages stacked on top of each other. But what made this so disturbing was that this person had drawn UFOs, extremely bizarre demonic beings, weird-looking maps, and it also contained pages after pages of writing, which almost looked like they were written by someone who was almost in a trance-like state. Within hours, thousands of people were now going through the contents of this case, trying to make sense of what it all was because none of it actually made any sense. The drawings were really obscure and the writings were also very abrupt, as if the person wrote them in a feverish state. After going through the contents, the Redditors managed to identify the person who had made these drawings by finding his name on one of the pages. It was made by Daniel S. Christianis, who was born in 1904 and died in 1994. The OP then gave a theory that this person was likely traumatized by the events of World War II and that he might have actually been drafted as well, which might have led him to create these crazy pieces of artwork. There was evidence in the drawings as well, including this drawing where he had drawn a tornado. An address in the drawing and a VA medical center receipt showed that he was in fact a resident of Tampa Bay at the time. On the Imager album that the OP posted, he listed all the images one by one, and with the first image of the box he wrote, roughly 29 inches by 38 inches on the exterior. It smells of basements and dampness. This meant the box had been sitting there for a very long time, probably since the original creator made it. It's likely that he kept it hidden in the same cellar where he worked on his creations. As you flip through the album, you'll find this insanely detailed drawing of an anti-friction railroad bearing, and the level of precision is just crazy. It looks exactly like a patent design, which means he might have actually been trying to invent something real. There's no record of him ever filing it, but it definitely shows he was more than just an artist. He was an inventor too. Then things started to get weird. Some pages have maps of the world, but every single one of them has a hole cut right in the middle. According to the OP, it looked like he was layering them together, maybe to find a hidden location or pattern. And this is where the entire album starts to get really dark. because the further we go down, the less it looks like engineering, and the more it looks like something else entirely. Suddenly, there are drawings of UFOs and then a humanoid creature so detailed it's almost disturbing. It has 4 wings, 4 faces, and legs that don't even look human. The OP said this part seemed to capture a specific event that completely changed him. As Daniel wrote, and I quote, now things start to get a little odd. It seems that the artist saw something in Tampa, Florida in 1977 that changed him. This appears to be an early sketch of the event, referring to the image with the UFO. Then comes a really obscure image which shows really weird humanoid creatures kneeling down almost as if they are preying on a decayed globe-like structure, and right on top of them, there's something that looks like a grand structure. The OP described it as an obvious blending of the religious and the extraterrestrial. And this is where things really start to take off. If you go through Daniel's writings, you'll actually find proof that he was a Seventh-day Adventist, a group that believes Jesus will soon return to Earth to destroy all evil, and suddenly, his bizarre designs start to make sense. Most of his drawings were clearly inspired by the Book of Ezekiel, where angels are described as gyroscopic beings, wheels within wheels. That's exactly what many of his blueprints looked like. But that's not all. There were also multiple drawings of a strange structure in Tampa Bay that kept showing up again and again. Reddit users eventually tracked it down, and it turned out to be a real building, the Inverted Pyramid Pier. Curious, people started digging even deeper into Daniel's life, hoping to decode what his sketches actually meant. In one of his entries, he showed the pier being hit by a tornado in 1977, but when users checked, no tornado ever hit Tampa Bay that year. So, what exactly was this tornado-looking thing he kept drawing? Turns out, it wasn't a tornado at all. It was a UFO, or at least, that's what he believed. Because on that same date, an artist named Rockney Krebs had hosted a laser exhibition at the pier, projecting massive glowing beams into the night sky. People assumed Daniel must have mistaken those lights for something otherworldly. But here's the strange part. After July 7th, his writings became more and more obsessed with UFOs. One Redditor even found an old magazine Daniel mentioned, Omniscience and Science Fiction, and inside there was an illustration of lenticular clouds, strange cloud formations that looked like UFOs. Back then, people didn't even know what they were, and Daniel believed they were stealth shields used by alien crafts. And this is where the story spirals into pure madness. As the OP went deeper, he found something truly disturbing. Daniel wrote that Jesus was actually an extraterrestrial who would use anti-gravity technology to fly. And all the blueprints, all those machines, were meant to help Jesus return to Earth. Those strange creatures in his drawings weren't angels at all. They were flying suits for humans. Even the complex bearing designs were part of a massive invention he called the Puma Space Train, though its true purpose remains a mystery. At this point, we have to pause, because while Daniel was clearly struggling with something deep and psychological, those struggles drove him to create some of the most fascinating and intricate designs imaginable. And as a devoted Seventh-day Adventist, he believed all of it was to prepare for the end of the world. His album alone is endless. It would take hours to get through every page. But what if I told you there's even more? Yeah, after the initial discovery was made and the box of crazy made headlines on major news outlets, some new information was revealed by the original poster, Tram Stop Dan. The box of crazy was actually found way back in 2008 by a Reddit user named Dirty Gremlin, sitting right next to a dumpster in North Carolina. He immediately realized there was something special about what he just found, so instead of throwing it away, he decided to keep it safe. Years later, he shared it with one of his friends, a photographer who went by the name Tran Stop Dan. Together, they decided to finally release everything online for the world to see. After that, people went wild. A user named Funk Hayes gathered all the information, photos, and theories into one massive post, thinking this was the complete story of the Box of Crazy. Or at least, that's what everyone thought, until May of 2015, when something unbelievable happened. A Reddit user named That's My Box reached out to Funk Hayes, claiming she was the previous owner of the Box of Crazy. At first, everyone assumed it had to be fake, just another internet troll, until she shared never-before-seen fragments from the box. They weren't in the original collection, yet somehow, she had them. And this is where the mystery suddenly turns into a massive, absolutely crazy twist. Because it turns out, the woman who found the Box of Crazy had actually discovered it back in the 1990s, right after moving into a house that she bought for a suspiciously cheap price, but there was a catch. The house had once belonged to a man named Daniel S. Christines, and when she bought it, she didn't just get the property, she got all of his belongings too. Apparently, the Box of Crazy was just a small piece of Daniel's life work, not even 1/10 of it. When she first moved in, the house was cluttered, dirty, and strange. Stacks of papers, charts, and blueprints were scattered everywhere. She said there was even a weird-looking machine in his bedroom with a seat that was worn through from use. And here's the creepy part. Daniel had actually drawn that same design in his notes. According to him, the machine could be used to reach a higher plane of existence, see the future, and even communicate with otherworldly entities. He believed he could leave his body using it, and he'd even written down blueprints explaining exactly how it worked. Later, when the woman went through his papers and saw all the drawings of angels and UFOs, she thought it looked demonic. So she asked a few friends to help her get rid of everything, but apparently they didn't, because years later, when she visited one of those friends, she found one of Daniel's drawings framed in their living room. So she took everything back, every paper and sketch, but eventually lost it all while moving out. The new property owner ended up dumping the boxes near a dumpster, and that's where Dirty Gremlin found it. In the end, no one could really make sense of those drawings or the strange writings that came with them. Sure, people tried, and some, like Dan, came up with really thoughtful interpretations, but no one truly understood what was going on inside Daniel's mind. Some believe it was a form of outsider art, the kind that comes with deep trauma, when someone tries to process their pain through creativity. But honestly, it seems like Daniel might have been struggling with schizophrenia, mixed with a vivid imagination. And since he was exposed to these otherworldly ideas from such a young age, it's not hard to see how they ended up taking over his entire life. Super Heat Ran 2. Now, this next one might be a little unsettling for some viewers, so trigger warning. Violent content ahead. This whole mystery started with a user named SuperHeatRan2, who made a post on the Reddit Intelligence Agency, r/RBI2 subreddit, where he said, "Found this film photo at my thrift store, inside a old Kodak carousel box, and the image itself was nothing less than terrifying. It was a strip of a 35mm film, and I'm gonna have to blur it for YouTube, but it showed a blood-stained bed in the side of a wall with an undressed body between the bed and the wall. And these 35mm strips are old, but people sometimes still use them, so the only time estimation we can have of its existence and when it was taken would be anywhere from the 1970s to the current time. What makes this more terrifying is that it looks like a picture someone took right after committing a horrific murder, and it looks too real to be dismissed as an art project or fake. Explaining what he did next. Hello everyone. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so I'm leaving an update as a comment. Here's what I did. When I saw the photo, I was curious and pointed into a contrast area to look at it, and my body jolted because I was so shocked. I didn't buy the Kodak carousel and just took the photo and went outside. I went to another store next door and called the non-emergency line describing what I saw and that I felt like it was a genuine photo. They told me they're sending an officer when available. She said she didn't have an ETA. The dispatch person told me if I can wait at the thrift store, and I said yes. I'm waiting in my car as of now. The post took off almost instantly, and people were hooked to find out what would happen next, but everyone was glad because at least this would now get investigated by officials. Later, he posted another update. Second update. Still on phone, sorry. The officer arrived a bit after I posted the update. Him and I looked at the photo, and basically, he was just looking thoroughly and asked me where I found it, and I just described where I found it. Then him and I walked to the thrift store and showed him the exact box I found it. He sent a photo of the film to a coworker and spoke to him on it. He then took down my information and told me that he's going to take it to the people who can properly process the image to investigate it. I basically told him how I just thought the carousel was cool, so I opened it up to see the condition, and I saw the photo and thought someone left a family photo, so I checked, and it was a definite not a family photo. I also gave him the time I found it, a minute before I took the photo. He then said if there's any more questions or things, he'll reach out to me. But he says it's unlikely since I just found the photo and don't know much about it. He then said thank you, that's all he needed, and then took the box and photo, and then began to walk to the thrift store worker to ask questions, but I left. That's all I have so far. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I will be getting any update from them since I'm sure it's hard to go off a film photo, and since I just stumbled upon it from chance and have no other information other than what I said. If there's anything, I'll be sure to update. Sorry for any mistakes, I wrote this in my car and my hands are a bit shaky. After that, the post started reaching more people, and while some people did think it was fake and that the OP created it to get some attention online, most people said that it was real. A user made a comment saying, "I took a death investigation course in grad school, which used real death scene photos. This photo appears to be a real death scene. Though I cannot tell you if it's murder, natural, or self-induced, death naturally gets messy. The substances visible on him in the mattress don't necessarily mean it's foul play. You did the right thing calling the police. The fact that someone took a photo doesn't speak good things, regardless of the manner of death." Then, an hour later, he also posted a clearer picture of the image so that people could see it for real and identify anything that might be able to help. Then, another user came in and decided to analyze the image for people who were too scared to see it, while also saying that they think the picture was, in fact, real. The user said, "I feel like if it was fake, it would be either more or less gruesome. But there's something about the positioning of the body, the fact that it isn't a more attractive body type, read thin and beautiful for better optics, and the natural pattern of blood on the wall that indicates the victim fought and didn't die immediately. Visible hand/finger marks on the wall, in addition to smudges and splatter, just doesn't seem like it was some type of dark art project. Obviously, I can't say for sure, but I watch a ton of true crime and fiction crime shows. The difference in the brutality and realism of the crime scene photos are easy to distinguish." The OP then also posted a picture of the carousel that the film was in. And from what it looks like, this type of carousel was used in the 1980s, so it is safe to assume that the picture was in fact at least 40 years old. In the picture alone, there are too many signs that suggest it is real. There were a few clear signs that this was a real crime scene. Investigators noted a natural pattern of blood on the wall, along with smudges, splatters, and even visible handprints and finger marks. Experts in blood splatter analysis looked at it closely. It's a field that helps figure out what exactly happened during a violent offense. From the pattern, they believe the victim had fought back and did not die right away, which showed just how detailed their analysis was. In another comment, the OP mentioned that there was another really odd thing about the film. Usually, if you hold a 35mm film like this, they have this really smooth texture, almost like varnish. However, this film was a little different, as the OP mentioned, and I quote, "No worries about the question. I didn't smell it, but yes, it was sticky, as in it would stay on my index finger after pressing on it." This confirmed that the film was really old because a new 35mm film would have a really smooth texture, but if you leave them in a room temperature box for longer than a decade, they start to become sticky. And the fact that this stayed on his finger meant that it had been in this box for years. People started coming up with theories that whoever owned this might be a killer, who must have kept this photo as a trophy and eventually lost it over the years, and then it somehow ended up in a thrift store. Now, what makes this case so strange is that it's what people call a cold case anomaly, meaning it doesn't follow the usual pattern of how old unsolved cases are handled, because, as you guys already heard, the police actually took the photo as evidence, but after that, nothing. No updates, no statements, not even a small mention of the original image. It's like the case just vanished. Normally, when police find new evidence in a cold case, especially something involving possible remains or a crime scene, they release a public statement or ask for help, like they did with the famous Taro Calico Polaroid back in 1988, but here, the silence is total. That silence, though, might actually be intentional. In many cases, investigators hold back key details, things like the blood pattern, etc., to make sure only the real perpetrator knows them. If this slide really is genuine, it could be sensitive evidence they don't want to risk exposing. And that's why it's so puzzling. Because if it were fake, the police would have just come out and said so. The fact that they didn't might mean there's more to this than anyone realizes. And hopefully they catch the perpetrator soon, and if they do, then expect a video in the future, but for now, it's unsolved. Linda Pagano. This case starts inside a quiet college library, where a geology student named Christina Skates from Cleveland State University was digging through some old cemetery records. She was just doing her usual research when she stumbled upon one really strange entry. Now, normally, cemetery records have all the basic stuff: full name, date, maybe even some background about the person. But this one, it had none of that. In fact, it only said 3 words: white, female, bones. Christina could have just ignored it, thinking it was some old, incomplete file. But then she noticed something even weirder. Where the person's name should have been, there was just a number: woman 82483. So she reached out to the cemetery, hoping they'd know something, anything, but they didn't. Even their private records had 0 information. At that point, Christina realized no one had ever come forward to claim or even identify this person, so she decided to do what any modern-day detective would do. She took the mystery online. she made a post on r/unsolved mysteries, explaining everything she had found. The post read, Cleveland suburb, 74 to 75. While researching another Cleveland mystery, I stumbled upon a cemetery index listing for unidentified female bones. A call to the cemetery confirmed that no action had been taken since her interment, and further research at a local library of newspapers on microfiche turned up a handful of articles. I have attempted to contact the city's detective, but have not had any response in months. I have not contacted the county. No resolution is found within the articles, nor in any for some years after, and possibly to this day. A search of databases such as the county and state unidentified, as well as NAM-US, has not turned up anything that I can connect to this woman. As one will see in the articles, there was quite a confusion regarding who was handling the case, and with time surpassed, I think contributed to her not being listed. If there are any questions, I will do my best to answer. Now, unlike most people, who just post a missing case online and let Reddit detectives do their thing, Christina decided she was not stopping there. She wanted answers, so she started digging deeper, going through old news archives, trying to trace the mystery all the way back to where it began. And finally, after days and days of searching, she found something. The original report. It dated all the way back to February 5th, 1975. That day, 3 teenage boys were hiking through Rocky River Reservation in Strongsville, Ohio, when they noticed something strange. Sticking out of the mud was this pale, odd-looking structure. And being teenagers, of course, they decided to just check it out. Their curiosity quickly turned into fear, because that structure wasn't just a random object. It was a skeleton, and judging by the way it looked, it had been there for a long time. Now, instead of calling for help right away, the boys actually waited almost 6 hours before they finally contacted the police. When the officers arrived, they were confused too. The bones were so worn down that they couldn't even tell if they belonged to a person or an animal. But once they uncovered the skull, the truth hit them. This was human. When Christina found this piece of history, she reached out to everyone she could. The police, hospitals, park rangers, hoping someone, somewhere, still had records about it. But every door she knocked on led nowhere. No one had any clue. Then finally, she got a break. She managed to get her hands on the original autopsy report through the local forensics department, and what she discovered was heartbreaking. The skeleton showed clear signs of trauma, and even worse, some bones were missing, including the entire jaw. The report said the remains belonged to a young woman, somewhere between 17 and 23 years old, and the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. That's when Christina's worst fear came true. This was a murder, and whoever did it made sure she could never be identified. Christina kept digging and later found out that this case had actually been ruled out to be a cold case because the police at the time said, and I quote, "We're still trying, but we've gone about as far as possible with what we have now." And that was said by the Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office spokesman. For a long time, her remains just stayed inside the autopsy lab. There were a few disagreements about where she should be buried, and no one really knew what to do with her. But eventually, a decision was made. She was laid to rest in Highland View Cemetery, a place mostly reserved for people who can't be matched to any existing records, the forgotten and the unidentified. After finding all of this, Christina went back to her Reddit post and updated everything, every detail she had uncovered, along with what she plans to do next. And that's when things really started to take off. Her post began gaining traction. More people started commenting, and the mystery of white female bones suddenly became a case the entire Reddit community wanted to solve. A Reddit user named books_and_wine replied by saying, It is really heartbreaking that most of the coverage was not focused on trying to identify her or discover what happened, S-word, murder, etc., but rather on inter-bureaucratic bickering over who had to foot the bill to bury her. That just makes me sad. The Darcy Brown case references a similar disappearance of the second wife of Darcy's murderer husband. She disappeared from Cleveland in 1973. She was 29. A little older than projected, but definitely within the range. But even with all of that effort, it still felt like a dead end. Then, one Reddit user reached out and asked if they could share her research on Web Sleuths, which was one of the biggest true crime forums at the time. Christina agreed, and once the post went up there, the case suddenly exploded with attention. Christina kept updating her original Reddit post with every small detail that surfaced from Web Sleuths, and that's when another online detective stepped in. His name was Carl Koppelman. He wrote, "Incidentally, I just spoke with Cuyahoga MedX office about this case yesterday. They had contacted me regarding the 1981 USLID Bosca Tech John Doe, and while I had her on the phone, I asked about this case. She couldn't find anything in her records about this Jane Doe, and was totally unaware of her existence. I sent her the link to this case file that ICE 190 obtained, and the PM photos. Hopefully she can find additional info and get her into NAMUs, now that she is aware of this case." Anj Fisher from the Cuyahoga County MedX office looked in her system and discovered that she was not included with the other UID cases because the word unidentified was misspelled. But they have all the info on this case, and she's going to send what she has to the NAMUs and get a case file set up for this case. It turned out that the only reason this Jane Doe had no record, no match, and no connection to any missing persons case was because of a single typo. The word unidentified had been misspelled in the system, and since these databases are fully automated, that one tiny mistake basically erased her from existence. For over 50 years, no one could link those bones to any missing person because, in the system's eyes, she didn't exist at all. Now that the error was finally found, it was time to move toward facial reconstruction to figure out who she really was. They needed a face, something solid, to compare against old missing person photos. But just when it felt like they were getting close, another problem showed up. As Christina wrote in her post, "I've obtained the ME autopsy report. Since I was able to obtain it, I presume it's legal to put on here for research. I think a call to Barria PD in the Western Reserve Medical Center may help. I think we're screwed on facial reconstruction. The skeleton was missing quite a few bones due to scavenging of animals and possibly water current. Only 5 teeth and an unerupted number 16 wisdom tooth were present. Post-mortem loss of the others. No mandible. Report might be gruesome for some. Case number 156963, autopsy number M38363. Tell me what you make of it." However, this is where the guy I mentioned earlier, Carl, became an essential person in the case, because he had been solving these types of cases for years online. He had even done the facial reconstruction for another cold case of a woman called the Walker County Jane Doe, so he was the perfect person for this case, who had just managed to be there at the perfect time. Using his past experience in cases like these, and by using the data available on the current Jane Doe, he managed to create a sketch of what she might have looked like, and this was a massive breakthrough in the case. And this is when Carl found another lead. This newly listed missing woman from late 1974 looks like a very good possible for Strongsville Jane, Linda Pagano. Age is right, location is good, time frame is good, her listed height is a little short. He then contacted law enforcement, and they went through every record they could find, but nothing matched, which meant it was finally time to exhume the body. Working with the University of Akron, They located the exact burial spot and recovered what was left of the remains. The bones were sent for DNA analysis, while authorities turned to something called a GNE match to trace her family. It's basically an open source DNA database where investigators compare unidentified DNA to public genealogy reports, using distant family connections to slowly piece together who the person really was. The potential match: family members of Linda Pagano voluntarily gave mouth swabs for DNA testing. Now it was time for them to wait. Months passed with no update. However, on June 29th, 2018, the identity of the bones was finally revealed. It was in fact Linda Pagano. Carl made a post saying, "Just got word from Linda Pagano's sister that Strongsville Jane Doe is in fact Linda Pagano. Although the authorities were onto the possible match before I called it in, I am flagging the thread as a WS match because, if not for the amazing sleuthing work by ICE 190, this case would still be buried deep in the police and coroner's office archives. It was only because ICE 190 decided to investigate a Jane Doe grave that was not listed anywhere. The case was listed in NAMUs and consequently was noticed by Akron PD. Congratulations, ICE 190, and great work." The case was finally solved, and woman 82483 finally had a name: Linda Pagano. But who was Linda? And more importantly, who killed her? Well, the internet detectives managed to piece together her entire story. Linda was a 17-year-old girl living a normal teenage life. On August 31st, 1974, she went missing. But according to her stepfather, Brian Claflin, that was the day they had a fight, and he kicked her out of the house. She never came back. He told the police she probably ran away, but her family did not believe that for a second. Still, the case was labeled as a runaway and quietly closed. A year later, when the bones were found, Linda's brother, Mike Pagano, actually reached out to the police, telling them the remains were discovered close to where she'd last been seen. But since the case was already closed, no one listened. And that's what makes this so tragic, because to this day, no one truly knows who killed her. The only thing we do know is that her stepfather's story never really made sense. He had a violent past, was known for losing his temper, and his timeline did not match up with what Linda's boyfriend said. So maybe, if the police had listened back then, they could have caught her killer and given Linda justice decades sooner. And alright guys, that wraps up some of Reddit's darkest mysteries. I hope you enjoyed today's video. My favorite case was the Box of Crazy. I thought it was so interesting, and I just wonder what was going on inside that guy's head. And I hope those drawings are safe, because that really is artwork. And I think it needs to be preserved, and it's very, very interesting. But all of the other cases were super interesting as well. Comment down below what you thought was the most interesting. Thank you so much for watching to the end of today's video, and please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep making videos like this, and join the Patreon for early access, uncensored videos, and the weekly Snook Show. I appreciate you guys watching. This is Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.